Her name is Evelyn, and she's 70. But when she enters a room, age becomes merely a number, and silence becomes her ally. Last night, sitting by a crackling fireplace, she looked at her grandchildren and said, "Life is not what you gather, but what you leave behind." Her voice was soft, like the whisper of the wind, but the words fell into their hearts like stones into still water, leaving ripples on the surface. Everyone fell silent. Even the noisiest of the boys, who a minute ago had been chasing the cat around the room, froze and stared at her with wide eyes. What is it about her? Why is she listened to? From the neighbor who dropped by for a cup of sugar to the old friend who calls from another city. Evelyn doesn't speak much, but each of her words is like a key that unlocks something within you. Today, she will reveal 5 secrets, 5 types of women who are respected and listened to at any age. And here's a clue. One of them, perhaps, already lives within you. Want to know which one? Then listen carefully. Evelyn doesn't like repeating herself. Evelyn smiles slightly, looking at you through the screen. Her eyes are like an old mirror, reflecting years, but not the dust of time, but the light of understanding. The first woman who is always listened to is the wise mentor, she begins, and her voice flows like a river that grinds stone, slowly but relentlessly. She doesn't shout, argue, or prove. She simply knows. And when you come to her with a knot of questions in your chest, she unravels it like a ball of yarn, thread by thread, until everything becomes clear. This is a woman to whom people turn for advice. Her eyes have seen tears and laughter. Her heart has known losses and victories. She didn't just live through the years, she understood them, and when she speaks, her words are not an empty sound, but a lantern in the fog. They illuminate the path. Evelyn pauses, and you almost hear the fire crackling in her fireplace. She's not in a hurry with her answers. She looks at you, as if reading a book, and answers in a way that you suddenly see yourself from the outside. This is her gift, to see more than words say. What's so special about her? Evelyn continues, leaning a little closer, as if sharing a secret. Calmness is her armor. She doesn't rush, doesn't panic, even when the world around is burning. Discretion is her compass. She doesn't throw words to the wind, but weighs them like gold on old scales. And also, she knows how to step back to see the whole picture. It's not coldness, no. It's like looking from a hill at a raging river below. She knows where the current is dangerous and where you can cross. Imagine a woman, Evelyn says, and her voice becomes warmer. She's 30, and a friend is crying in her kitchen. He left. I don't know what to do. And she, instead of throwing out loud, forget him, pours tea and asks, what do you want? And then, an hour later, the friend leaves with dry eyes and a plan in her head. Now that same woman is 70. Her grandson, a lanky guy with headphones, sits down beside her and grumbles, "Grandma, I failed the exam. I'm a complete zero." She puts her hand on his shoulder and says, "Zero is a beginning, not an end. What will you do tomorrow?" And he, without realizing it, is already cramming a textbook a week later. She is respected not for her age, but for the fact that she sees the essence. Evelyn smiles slightly. I knew such a woman. My neighbor Marge. She was almost 80 when I was still a girl. She always had a pie on the table, and a few words for everyone. Once I ran to her in tears. The guy I fell in love with broke my heart. She looked at me and said, "Girl, tears are water, and you are a river. Let them flow, and move on." I still remember how those words lifted me off my knees. That's what wisdom means. Not a bunch of quotes, but a simple truth that hits the mark. A wise mentor is like an old tree in the forest, Evelyn says, and you almost see it. Strong roots, sprawling branches. People come to her for shade in the heat and for shelter in a storm. Her words are not thunder, but rain, quiet, but nourishing the earth. And you know what? She doesn't teach how to live. She shows how to breathe when it seems there is no air. March, want to be like that? Evelyn looks directly at you, and her question hangs in the air. Learn to listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole being. Observe how people walk, speak, are silent. Answers come not from noise, but from silence. I saw how my friend Lily, who worked as a teacher all her life, could calm a class with one look. She didn't shout, she waited, and the children themselves reached out to her. Start small. Today, listen to someone without interrupting. You'll see how it changes everything. But here's a question. Evelyn narrows her eyes, and a slight intrigue appears in her tone. Why are some words forgotten in a minute, and others stay with you for years? This is not magic, but skill, and I will reveal its secret a little later. For now, think. Who in your life was such a mentor? Maybe your mother, grandmother, colleague. Write in the comments. I'm curious. And don't leave. There are 4 more types ahead, and one of them will definitely surprise you. Evelyn falls silent, and you feel her words settling somewhere inside. She didn't just tell. She painted a picture that you see. A woman who stands like a lighthouse in a storm, and people who reach for her light. This is not a lecture, but a conversation by the fireplace, where each word is like coal that warms the soul. If you feel comfortable sitting with me by this fireplace, subscribe to the channel. We'll meet more often, and put a like if something caught you. I'll appreciate it. If you like this conversation, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more interesting to come. And put a like if something resonated. Evelyn sits a little straighter. Her gaze becomes sharp, like the blade of a knife that cuts truth from lies. Now, about another woman, she says, and a ring of steel appears in her voice. Her name is the independent leader. She doesn't wait for someone to show her the way. She paves it herself, through thorns, through doubts, through storms. And people follow her because they see this woman knows where she's going. She takes a sip of tea, and the steam from the cup curls upwards, like her thoughts that stretch towards something bigger. This is a woman who understands what she wants. Not tomorrow, not someday, but right now. And she's not afraid to take on the burden, for herself, for her family, for a whole crowd if necessary. Her strength is not in loud speeches, but in how she gets up after falls. She doesn't ask for help. She builds bridges so that others can cross the abyss. Evelyn looks to the side, as if remembering. At 25, she sits at a table littered with papers and says to herself, I will do this. And she does, step by step, until she ends up where others only dream. She's 50, and she stands before people, whether it's a project or a business, and with one look makes them believe anything is possible. She's listened to not because she's the loudest. No, her deeds speak for her, like an echo in the mountains, long, loud, without unnecessary words. I saw such a woman, Evelyn continues, and her voice warms up like the sun after rain. My niece Clara, she was barely 30 when she decided to open her bakery. Everyone shook their heads. Who bakes bread at home now? The stores are full. But she got up at 4 in the morning, kneaded dough until her hands ached, and a year later, everyone in the area knew her buns. Now she's over 60, and she doesn't just bake. She teaches others how to turn flour and water into a dream. People come not only for bread, but for her confidence. She didn't complain, didn't whine. She did. Evelyn leans a little closer, and you feel her words embracing you like an old coat, warm, reliable. This woman is like a lighthouse in a storm. Her confidence is the light that pierces the darkness. Determination is her wind that drives the ship forward. And resilience? Oh, those are the roots that hold the tree when the storm wants to break it. Once my old friend Jack, who repaired cars all his life, said to me, "Evelyn, I would follow such a woman into fire." And I understood it's not about the fact that she commands. It's about the fact that she doesn't give up. And you know what's most beautiful about her? Evelyn smiles, and in that smile is a whole life. She's not afraid of mistakes. She falls, she gets up. She fails, she starts again. I remember how Clara once burned a whole tray of pies before a large order. She didn't cry. She laughed, threw away the coals, and said, "The next one will be better." And it was. Leadership is not about perfection. It's about moving forward, even when your legs are shaking. She looks directly at you, and her gaze is like a ray that seeks something in your soul. If you want to be like that, set goals. Not big, loud ones. Start small. Decided to get up earlier? Get up. Want to change something? Take the first step. Mistakes are not enemies, but teachers. I'm still learning at 70. I recently baked a pie, and it turned out like a brick. I laughed until I cried, and then baked a new one. And you know what? The second one was tastier than all the previous ones. Evelyn leans back, and her voice becomes quieter, but because of this, it only cuts more deeply into memory. Tell me, have you ever moved forward, despite fear? Maybe you quit a job that suffocated you, or started your own business with empty pockets. Write about it. I want to know. After all, a leader is not the one who commands, but the one who inspires. And soon, I will tell you about a woman who does this in a completely different way, through silence and warmth. Be surprised how simply she changes the world. Evelyn folds her hands on her lap, and her face softens, as if she is looking at an old photograph, where something dear is captured. And now, about the one who doesn't just hear, but feels, she begins, and her voice becomes like the rustling of leaves, quiet, but alive. This is the empathetic listener. She doesn't throw words around, doesn't rush to teach life. She sits down beside you, looks you in the eyes, and suddenly you understand. You are seen. You are understood. And because of this, it's easier to breathe. She tilts her head slightly, as if listening to something distant. Her gift is in how she catches your feelings, like butterflies in her palms. She won't crush them, won't scare them away. She'll just give them space. People come to her not for advice, but for support that is warmer than a fire in the hearth. She doesn't say, "Everything will be all right." She is silent in such a way that you believe it yourself. At 20, she sits with a friend who has just had a fight with someone close, Evelyn continues, and you almost see this scene. Two girls on the sofa, one in tears, the other with a cup in her hands. She doesn't interrupt, doesn't fuss. She just listens until the words run out, and then says, "You're stronger than you think." And the friend leaves with her back straight. She's 60, and she's already the soul of the company, not because she laughs the loudest, but because around her people become closer to each other. Her home is like a haven where people come to take shelter from the storm. Evelyn smiles, and in this smile is a whole story. I knew one. My friend Rose. She was over 70 when I was still young. She always had time to listen. Once I came to her, all on edge. Work, children, everything was falling out of my hands. She poured me some milk, sat opposite and said, "Evelyn, tell me." I spoke until my voice was hoarse, and she just nodded. And when I finished, she took my hand and said, "You'll manage. You're already managing." I left her feeling as if a mountain had fallen off my shoulders. Rose didn't solve my problems. She gave me a place where I could sort them out. This woman is like warm light in a window in winter, Evelyn says, and her words paint a picture. A snowy street, a yellow square of light, the smell of bread from inside. Her kindness is not loud, not bright, but quiet, like the first snow. Patience is her strength. She waits until you find the answer yourself, and doesn't rush. And she also knows how to make it safe next to her, like in childhood, when your mother stroked your head. People are drawn to her because they know they won't be judged here. Once my grandson, he was 15 then, came to me angry, Evelyn recalls, and a soft laughter sounds in her voice. He slammed the door through, "Everyone is getting on my nerves." I didn't start lecturing. I sat down beside him, asked, "What happened?" He was silent for 10 minutes, and then laid it all out. About friends, about school. I just nodded. And when he finished, he said, "Grandma, it's easier with you." That's it. The power of listening. Not to interrupt, not to butt in with moralizing, but simply to be there. Evelyn looks at you, and her gaze is like a bridge that invites you to step closer. Try it yourself. Today, when someone starts talking, don't rush to answer. Listen, not with your ears, but with your heart. Ask, "What are you feeling?" You will see how a person opens up, like a flower in the sun. This is more valuable than you think. I'm still learning. Sometimes I want to put in my 2 cents, but I hold back. And you know what? Silence speaks louder than words. She narrows her eyes slightly, and a hint of mystery appears in her voice. And can you listen? Was there a person in your life next to whom you felt heard? Right. I'm curious, and don't leave. The next woman is completely different. She doesn't remain silent, but ignites sparks that change everything around. Want to know how? I'll tell you soon. We have more to discuss. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And a like would be great to see if you like these topics. Evelyn tilts her head slightly, and something mischievous flickers in her eyes, as if she is about to reveal a secret that she herself discovered not yesterday. "And now, about the one who doesn't sit still," she begins, and her voice sounds like the crackling of firewood in a fire. Lively, warm, with a slight challenge. This is the creative spark. She doesn't just live, she creates, and people listen to her because her light is impossible not to notice. She runs her hand through the air, as if drawing something invisible. There she. This woman is like the wind that brings change. She knows that the world is a canvas, and she's not afraid to pick up a brush. Her ideas, her passion, her hands, all this gives birth to something new. It doesn't matter whether she writes songs, sews a dress, or plants flowers where there was emptiness. She inspires not with words, but with what she leaves behind, like footprints in the sand that beckon you to go further. At 30, she might be sitting at a table with a pencil, coming up with a story that gives you goosebumps, Evelyn says, and you see this woman, the light of a lamp, a scattering of papers, burning eyes, And at 70, she teaches children in the village to weave baskets, and they run to her because the world becomes brighter with her. She is respected not for her loud victories, but for the fact that she doesn't hide her fire. She shares it. Evelyn smiles, and in this smile is a memory of the past. I knew one. My sister Anna, she was over 60 when she suddenly decided to paint the walls of her house. Everyone laughed. "What have you, old woman, come up with?" But she took the paints and turned the grey walls into a garden. Flowers, birds, sun. The neighbours grumbled at first, but then they came to watch, took tea, and sat in her yard. Anna didn't argue, didn't prove, she just did. And people were drawn to her like moths to a light. This woman is like a bonfire at night, Evelyn continues, and her words paint a picture, a dark forest, dancing flames, warmth that beckons you to sit closer. Her originality is the sparks that fly into the sky. Passion is the fuel that prevents her from fading. An openness to new things is like the wind that fans the fire. Once I myself, already in my 70s, decided to embroider a scarf. Nothing complicated, just a flower. My hands trembled, the threads got tangled, but I finished. And you know what? My neighbor asked for the same one. Neighbor, sometimes one spark gives birth to a whole flame. I had a case, Evelyn laughs, and this laughter is like the ringing of a bell. My granddaughter, she was 12, once said, "Grandma, teach me to draw." I'm not an artist, but we took crayons and painted the entire sidewalk in front of the house. Sun, dogs, stars. Neighbors walked by, smiled. Some even sat down with us. It's not a masterpiece, but it was alive. Creativity is not in perfection, but in how it connects people. She looks at you, and her gaze is like a light push, calling you to try. Don't be afraid to ignite your spark. Take something simple. Write a line. Plant a seed. Come up with a fairy tale for a child. Don't wait for it to turn out perfectly. The main thing is to start. I'm still trying new things. I recently molded a pot out of clay. Crooked, askew, but mine. And it stands on the shelf as a reminder. To create means to live. Evelyn narrows her eyes, and a hint of something bigger appears in her voice. And what did you create last time? Maybe a cake for friends, or a drawing in a notebook. Write, I want to hear your sparks. And don't leave. The last woman is completely different. She doesn't ignite fires, but keeps them, like a treasure. Be surprised how simple and strong it is. Evelyn leans back. Her hands rest on her knees, as if holding something invisible, but heavy from time. And here's the last one, she begins, and her voice sounds like steps on the wooden floor of an old house, firm, but with warmth. This is the keeper of traditions. She doesn't chase the new, doesn't shout about herself. She stands like an oak in a field and holds the roots so that others can grow. She looks to the side, and it seems that the shadows of the past flicker before her. This woman knows where we came from. Her strength is in the fact that she remembers and passes on, not for praise, but because she believes, without roots, a tree falls. She cherishes stories, songs, recipes, everything that connects us with those who are no longer with us. And people listen to her, because in her words is the voice of time. At 40, she teaches children to bake pies, as her grandmother did, Evelyn says, and you almost feel the smell of dough, hear laughter at the table. She's 80, and she sits with her grandchildren, telling how her father repaired nets, or how her mother sang lullabies. She is respected not for her loudness, but for the fact that she is a bridge between yesterday and tomorrow. She doesn't just keep, She makes the past live. Evelyn smiles, and in this smile is a whole life. My mother was like that. She was over 70 when she sat with us by the fire and told us about grandfather, how he built a house with his bare hands. She took an old album, showed faded photos, and said, "This is your blood, don't forget." I didn't understand why then. And now, in my 70s, I myself take out her spoon, the one she held, and cook soup according to her recipe, and every time I eat it, she's as if nearby. This woman is like a river that flows for centuries, Evelyn continues, and her words flow just as smoothly. Her devotion is the water that nourishes the banks. The depth is in her memory, which prevents forgetting, and the ability to adapt is like the current that bypasses stones. Once a neighbour, a young mother, came to me and said, "Evelyn, teach me to bake your bread." I gave her my mother's recipe, but added a pinch of my own, cinnamon. She left with a loaf and a smile. Tradition lives when it's carried on. There was a case, Evelyn laughs quietly, as if remembering something bright. My grandson, he's 18, once asked, "Grandma, why do you put up this old Christmas tree every year?" I took out a toy, a glass ball that hung on my parents' tree, and said, "It's not just a Christmas tree. It's us, everyone who was before us." He shrugged, but then he hung that ball himself, and the next year he brought his own figurine, a deer. That's how it goes, from heart to heart. She looks at you, and her gaze is like a thread that stretches through the years. Find your treasure. Maybe it's a song your mother sang to you, or an old custom that warms your soul. Take it, preserve it, add something of your own, and pass it on. I'm still knitting mittens, as my grandmother taught me. My fingers aren't the same, but each loop is like her voice. It's not just threads, it's love. Evelyn falls silent for a moment, then adds with a light spark in her voice, "And what do you keep? Maybe a recipe, a fairy tale, an old photograph. Write, I want to know what holds your roots. And stay. Soon I'll summarize, and you'll find out which of these women lives in you. It's closer than you think." Evelyn sits quietly. The fire in the fireplace behind her is dying down, and the embers glow like stars at night. She looks at you, and in her eyes are not just years, but the light that gathered everything she talked about. That's all," she begins, and her voice is soft, like a shawl that warms your shoulders. 5 women, 5 paths, the wise mentor who illuminates the way, the independent leader who builds bridges, the empathetic listener who gives warmth, the creative spark that ignites fires, and the keeper of traditions who holds the roots. They are different, but each has a strength that makes people listen and respect. She leans a little closer, and it seems that the room narrows down to just the 2 of you. I saw them all, in myself, in others. At 20, I learned to listen. At 40, to move forward. At 70, to preserve. And you know what? They don't go away with age. They grow, like a tree that reaches for the sun, but holds on to the earth. These women are not somewhere out there. They are in you. Maybe you're already a mentor to a friend, a leader to your family, a spark for your children. Or maybe you keep something that is more precious than gold. Evelyn smiles, and in this smile is an invitation. Think, which of them is closest to you? Whose strength already lives in your hands, in your words? I'm still learning. Sometimes I burn a pie. Sometimes I listen to my grandson. Sometimes I sing an old song, and each time I find something new in myself. And you? Who are you today? Write to me in the comments. I will read every line. I'm curious what kind of women you are. She pauses, and the silence becomes part of her words. Life is not what you take, but what you leave behind. Be the one who is listened to, because you are real. If you enjoyed sitting with me by this fireplace, put a like, share with someone close. Maybe they will also find their strength and come back again. I always have tea and a couple of stories. Evelyn nods, as if saying goodbye, but not forever. See you, she says, and her voice settles in you like coal that still smoulders, warming from within. If you found this interesting, put a like and share with your friends. Let them watch too, and a subscription, to be on the same wavelength with us.